This is presented by Van Chap Capital LLC for informational purposes only. The future-looking statements and opinions expressed herein do not necessarily represent Van Chap's views and opinions and may over time be proven inaccurate. Van Chap may or may not manage securities positions of the issuers discussed in this presentation. Nothing herein constitutes an offer to sell or a solicitation for an offer to buy any security. Van Chap does not guarantee the accuracy of the information provided herein, and this presentation should not be the basis of any investment decision.
All righty, everyone. Well, thanks for taking the time to join us today. We really appreciate it. We're really excited to have Luis Barrios with us today. He's the co-founder, chairman, and CEO of Hoteles City Express and has over 3 decades of experience building Hoteles into one of the largest hotel groups in Mexico. We've been waiting to do this for a while, and we thought it'd be particularly interesting today considering the crisis. So we're just going to dive right in. First of all, maybe you can tell us about how you got into the hotel industry. How did you get interested in it to begin, and what was the initial attraction? Maybe we can start there.
Of course, I was working in a large concern, industrial concern, capital goods concern back in the 80s, and we got a terrible crisis in Mexico, and it's when the Mexico government nationalized the banking industry, as well as the back in 81, the oil price went down, and then Pemex and the whole country went into a crash. And I was working in this capital goods concern, very large, and I spent about 5 years doing the restructuring and a very horrible experience in the sense of when you're in the good times, the bankers invite you to their suites for new loans, and in this case, I ended up in the back office of the bank with the lawyers restructuring a whole lot of debt. So it was horrible, but on the other side, it was a great experience back when I was 30 years old. So I spent 5 years restructuring, redoing completely the financial structure of the company, buying debt in the market, capitalizing, and we did a lot of things. So when I finished that project, I was finishing that scheme, and we ended up having everything in good shape. I was invited by Don Gaston Azcárraga, which was the chairman of Posadas, and he invited me to a new scenario of growth. When you come from something that imploded to something that was exploding. And he invited me to Posadas, and we had about 16 hotels back in those days, most of them franchised and managed. And there were many schemes, financial schemes back in those days to buy UMS, Mexican government paper, and then convert it to Mexican pesos. You bought it at a discount and you got a premium in the conversion if you were going to invest those resources in the hotel industry. So it was something direct geared towards generating foreign exchange for foreign currency for the country. So we did that, and so I moved there and started instead of reconstructing, it was really financing growth. So it was really amazing and very, very interesting what we did. And we finally we converted about 500 million US into Mexican pesos, and we grew the company from 16 hotels to more than 60. And then we ended up owning a lot of hotels because of this scheme in which it was very enticing to invest in hotels. And that's how I started, really from the financial background. Started to grow and go up the ladder in the company until becoming a CEO. And I had the chance to convert which was a small concern of franchise and management to what became the largest chain in LATAM back in those days, mostly by developing your own properties and resorts and creating the Fiesta Inn brand, which is a business-oriented brand in the 4-star category. And developing all the reservations. Back in those days, we had telex still to do reservations, and we had acoustic modems in which we connected the hotels in order to do to do the communication and the fax, and we had antennas to receive from the satellites. They tried to get or recreate an online reservation system. So I learned a lot, and we also grew the company.
Lots changed. Yeah.
And that was all it happened until 1999, in which Don Gaston passed away in 92. I went to work for a couple of years we created a financial institution, a financial group, small, a broker and a small bank. And then another crisis hit in 84. And the guys from Posadas, the kids, now the family of Don Gaston, invited me back to a CEO. So I spent another 6 years with them until in 99. They wanted to manage the company themselves. And I walked out and created City Express. Well, the previous City Express version, we'll talk about later on.
Yeah,
no, that's how great. It was really a matter of, first of all, a great invitation to this wonderful sector of the economy. And for Mexico is what it is now today, represents 9% of the GDP. So you can imagine the size. And then it was a matter of walking out because the kids wanted to do their own show. And I was unemployed, so I decided to start City.
And maybe you could talk a little bit about that in terms of your interest, particularly. You mentioned you started Fiesta Inn, but what compelled you into the sort of business class limited service, and how did you get the confidence to go out on your own after that? I guess you didn't have many choices as you were unemployed, and how did you attract such notable investors at the beginning? What was your business plan?
First of all, what happened with Fiesta Inn, it was a hit against all the odds of the industry. Nobody thought that you could make money in the lower scale of hotels. No, everybody wanted the flashy 5-star Cancun type of property, or the flashy 5 stars in Mexico City, downtown Mexico City, Monterrey, and Guadalajara. Right. And that's why we started Fiesta Inn, because we needed to grow in city, and we knew that there was a lack of standardized product. I mean, not in this case Posadas. We needed a product, and we started the Fiesta Inn, which was a 4-star. And what happened with Posada, with the product, is what happens with many other brands in the U.S. When the Holiday Inn started, Hampton Inn, even Hilton Garden Inn, etc., these hotels were more modest. Okay, and the franchisor, the owners of the franchise, started to beef up the product with larger TVs, more comfortable rooms, fancier spreadsheets, and the like. So the same happened to Fiesta Inn. So the prices started to rise, the rate. So I decided when I left, I didn't have the resources to develop a 5-star, and I wanted to do something that could have a larger scale. So there was, again, when I left, there was the gap again. The Fiesta Inns started to go up in rate, and they left a price range in the bottom of the pyramid, which was very enticing. Especially you see, we had 7 years with the NAFTA deal, and therefore the provinces and the other states were expanding and growing. Intermediate cities were growing quite fast. So, and the warrior, the traveler, the guy that has to travel to work and needs a standardized product was kind of in the shadows. So that's why I was very confident that City Express could be a killer, and that's why we decided a product which was highly standardized. Doesn't had to be a fancy, but had to be elegant and practical and modern, and put the money where the customer really needed service, and not in space. Space and fancy.
Yeah. And then how did you get going? I mean, maybe you could just talk about the sort of launch, the founding. I assume you had some kind of business plan, and you attracted some investors. Maybe you could just talk a little bit about that process.
Well, first of all, I invited Javier Arce. Javier Arce came from Posadas. He was also in Posadas, but he left Posadas a year before I did. for several reasons. And I know the guy, and he was a great person to work with, and highly committed to whatever he did. And he was part responsible for construction. No, he was responsible for construction, and he was a project manager in city, in Posadas. So he was out, and I decided, I invited him to have a lunch at home and said, well, we are unemployed. Let's do something. Let's play with this model. And we started to play designing the model in such a way to start with from the market inwards. In other words, saying, okay, what's the rate that we could charge for this product? And we defined it that we could charge 520 pesos, which back in those days were 52 bucks. And work from that. And we wanted to decide, we established a budget of $30 to $35,000 per key to work. So we concentrated in designing a modern product that could work, could be put in the market for $35,000. And that's how we started to work the model back and forth. So we decided, we did the drawings. We traveled to the US to see what was going on in that area. And we visited some hotels from Choice, and there was the Fairfield was really initiating, also was very modest, the same way the first sleep-ins were very, very modest. And we decided, okay, here we have some ideas, let's convert it to the Mexican market. And then we decided to design the product the way it was. Always in concentrating in having a product with design, something that in the States didn't exist back in those days. And using a lot of tile and little arcs and a Mexican hacienda and the like. No? So we decided to do something modern, and that's how we ended up with a Danish design, very straight lines, bright colors, which was against the hoteliers of the era, because they wanted dark rugs in order to hide the dust. No? And so we decided to put clean colors, nice, bright, and that's how it started. Always concentrating, and we have this. We love nature, and we are an outdoor guys. So we decided to concentrate and put some issues about the sustainability in terms of keeping the environment in good shape. So we concentrated in designing something that had the engineering behind to use the less amount of liters of water and kilowatts hour, and trying to use sustainable paint and something like that. No,
from the beginning you did
had
this.
Many issues in it that initially you might say that it costed a little bit more. Probably they did. But when you started operation, we realized that we were in the right track. We were having higher margins than the rest of the pack. So that's how it all started. And we focused on where NAFTA was having the most impact, the positive impact. And that was the road from Mexico to Nuevo Laredo, which is the NAFTA highway, and which connects to I-35 in Texas. So that's how we started. We designed a map from Mexico to Laredo, then Mexico to Chihuahua, which is the Highway 45 that lands in El Paso. The border towns, obviously, from Tijuana to Matamoros, and the Gulf Corridor, which was the oil industry. That was the initial. The second stage would include Highway 15, which goes all the way on the Pacific coast, all the way up to Nogales and to Arizona. And with that, we covered another section of the country, which was, it's a huge exporter. Back in those days, today it has reshaped, but it was most of the produce and cattle was the exporter of that corridor. Now it's full of industry and aerospace and so that's how we grew. We saw the plan back in those days.
And then you took this. Yeah, and you took this. Maybe you could talk about how you marketed this to investors. You had a business plan. You raised money from Mexican folks, or how did you go about that whole process?
The first thing we did is, right after leaving Posadas, I received several invitations from small hotel companies, hotel concerns, mom and pop owning 4 or 5 properties or having invested in Holiday Inns or some Hampton Inns. So they invited me up there in Monterey, and as board member. And then we started to chat about, and that's how it all started, designing, well, why don't I design this brand and invite some people. And I invited a couple of friends and family, well, not friends and family, these guys that invited me to work with them in their boards. And I presented the project, and some of them participated in it. But that's how we created what it was called Optim Express. It was not City Express at that time. So we invited, there was five partners, and then it worked for a year, and then it went busted because these guys were not in the same wavelength that I was planning to do. So they were a construction company, and they wanted really to do it as to profit from the construction. And in my case, and Javier and I knew that was a no-go. We were trying to minimize the cost, not maximize the cost for one of the partners, no? So that's how we shot that business in one December 2001. And then we decided to quit. We tried to buy what was there of company, the systems, and the first hotel that we did in Monterey, which today is a Fairfield Inn in the airport, over by the airport. And we started over again. And in 90 days, I was able to raise equity. We raised $18 million in 3 months. So we opened the company April 30th of 2002 with $18 million and as equity. The plan was 18 of equity, 13 of debt from domestic sources to finance the first 10 properties, and the $1 million to fund the operating company during a couple of.
And you raised that from local investors or who?
Local investors. I invited now friends and family. Some of the investors in the previous project, 2 of them, the Zorrilla, Joel and Victor, came over, and I invited people from Monterey and Mexico City, which these guys were really professionals. They didn't leave out of these resources, and they wanted to see the company grow. And I also learned that, I didn't have the resources to control the company, but so we invited a lot of investors that had minority portions, very professionals, well-known, investment savvy people, and seasoned guys that could really help me have a great corporate governance.
Yeah.
And very bright guys that were really thinking in growth rather than control. And in that way, they would never choke the company because they wanted to control it.
But they also added more value than just obviously their dollars.
Definitely, it was wise money. We're really up to now, we have, I would say 90% of them still shareholders of cities.
Amazing. Maybe you already answered it, I guess, in sort of round 1, but could you talk about sort of the biggest difficulty you overcame during those early days? Obviously, you had the issue with the first entity, but what was the sort of getting that first hotel going and sort of scaling from there? What was in those early years? What was the biggest difficulty?
Let me tell you, we didn't have a trouble until probably these last a couple of years. So we were fortunate. We had, everything went fine. The thing is, I would say that the success of it is that Javier had a great experience in designing, construction, bidding, materials and suppliers, and he knew the tricks of the trade very much in building these kind of properties. And he became the project manager. He was obviously, he had equity, so his role was really something very important. And the other thing is that we were able to invite people that had, together with me, we had more than 80 years of experience in the industry back in those days.
Amazing.
So we had this lady Blanca from the marketing area. He led that. He came from Posadas. She left Posadas 3 or 4 years before, and she was working from home as a freelance, is still in the marketing area. Then we also invited Francisco Fabregat. Francisco was the IT guy in Posadas. He left 2 or 3 years before, and he went to work for GE Capital, and he was kind of pissed off of working for them. So I invited him as part-timer, and that's how we got it. We got the guy that knew how to create, how to integrate the back of the house together with distribution and reservation systems and the communications of the whole deal, no?
Yeah.
And as well as, which was essential for operating at low cost. And I think that we were the only ones in the market with a highly integrated operating system. As well as Blanca with all the marketing concerns and the PR plans and the creation of a frequent guest program and the like. So we had in 4 or 5 guys, we had in my side, the developing side, the financing, project financing, and knowing the product and what we wanted, and then and the ability to fund and to raise equity, you know. And
yes.
we had the guys that would finally help me with the design and supervise the construction and get the low cost per key, and then the guys to distribute and IT. And the last guy that we invited was Rogelio, which he came directly from managing a Fiesta Inn over in Juarez, and he was kind of the key star in the 4 stars in the 4-star product in Posadas. He joined us as CEO, as COO of City, now COO of no hotels. So he had to create the systems and the operating procedures for the first hotel in Saltillo. And let me tell you that even himself was kind of blurred or confused because he wanted to have 40, 45 people to manage the property. And we told him, no, the model calls for 2022. So you have to adjust. What do we have to do to adjust to an operation like that?
Yeah.
And that's how it started. And so then we didn't really have any problems initially. Everything came on in time. We had 1 year pre-experience, no, in doing it for this company that went busted, so we had one year of advance in that. So we created a company in April, and in May 5 of a year later, we had the first hotel. By the end of the year, we had 5. So in 18 months from creation, we had 5 properties in operation, all the same.
Wow. So you had the team already basically ready to go. Obviously, that was a huge help, basically, that all the components
so
were
we got a great team. We got a modest amount of $31 million of resources, and then we had the board which was very, very supportive.
Yeah, no, that's very, very helpful, obviously. Maybe we can turn a little bit to the industry. I'm sure some of the folks would be interested in that. Maybe you could describe why the Mexican hotel industry is so much different than the US and some of the competitors that you have down there in the market.
Well, basically, yes, in Mexico, there are 740,000 rooms installed. Of them, back in those days, 80% were independent hotels. Very few brands and very few domestic brands. And most of the foreign brands were concentrated in the resort and high-end hotels in metropolitan areas. So the 4 stars was just beginning. Fiesta Inn we had Holiday Inn and Fiesta Inn, basically. And so there was nothing else. So that's where how the market starts to differentiate from the US. Starting a brand in the US back in those days, you had to fight with large companies, highly diversified in the US market. In Mexico, you were really going after the mom and pop and independent hotels. So there were no standards, no distribution systems, no brand image around the country, and you had a lot of people that had to travel and stayed in those properties. So that is what the Mexican market was different in those days, and still is. There's still great opportunity in it. 60% of the hotels in Mexico remain as mom and pop. As independent, let's say, is not necessarily mom and pop, independent. And on the other side, we had this price point in which nobody wanted to go. So we had the open field to grow. The problem of and it's part of the strategy why we had to build. No, everybody today, nobody wants hotels, want franchise and management companies, and they value high that, and they don't value the real estate as well as the brand and the management. Obviously, we had to develop. There were no standards. There were no properties that could be efficient at $50 with a cost of $30 to $35 a key, $35,000 a key. So we had to build. So that's something. Then there was no institutional capital or money to build. It's mostly independent. So there was no institutional money to fund the growth of a hotel chain. There was no brand image. There were a lot of independents that you can chew on, and you had the market. So it was really a completely different scenario than in the US for anyone that wanted to do a new brand.
Yeah, maybe it was like 30 years.
And that's what gave us the opportunity to do it.
Yeah. On that topic, I know over time you've earned Hotelis has earned higher margins than your peers, generally speaking, and it's mostly thought of as a commoditized industry where location is thought of as quite important. What is the secret sauce? I know that you spend a lot of time thinking about expenses, as you said. I think you even paint the paintings on some of the hotel room walls yourself, and are very focused on building a very good but efficient and inexpensive furniture. Maybe you can just talk about sort of what your secret sauce is in terms of the margins and competing with these folks.
Let me tell you, initially we didn't have the idea so clear. We knew that we had to start with a low cost per key, no, but we wanted to provide a good valued relationship between value and price or cost or rate. So we hired youngsters and my wife on a pro bono basis. She's an interior designer to help us design the interior, and on the other side, good youngsters out from the school that could charge a few, not high fees for their design, but we had new ideas in order to make it look nicer than it should. And we were into that now. So we accomplished quite fast. In operating, we just said, well, if I have $50 as rate, I need to run and get to 12 to 14% EBITDA divided by cost per key, and what is there remaining to operate this business. So we designed a cost structure. And there's where we started to identify that definitely technology was part of the solution. No, simplicity and technology. And the other thing just came through years. We started to use a lot of data crunching in order to compare, to do benchmark among the properties as to how much were they spending on each of the 4,000 different inputs that a hotel has to or at least could have as a cost items, no? So then we always try to concentrate on the best service. So try to have the best service for that money, and I think it worked again. Simplicity, standardization. When we started to build, instead of five a year, 10 or 14 a year, we figure out that we should start buying in bundle. So then we started to negotiate very hard with our suppliers. And the guy of the elevators knew that with us, he had a contract of 20, 30 hotels, I mean, elevators, and he started to give us wholesale prices. And the same started to happen in all the items needed for the construction. So the cost versus started to decrease in real terms, the cost per key, and that gave us that additional spread that we still have when we build a hotel. Low cost and then good operations. Then we moved towards going out and started doing yield management with our own systems. And then we moved also, I guess the culture of the company involves something that we call we based it on empowerment of the people. There are different concepts in how you get your people to be more realized and more happy with their jobs, and how they have a higher performance ratio than the rest. And it means empowerment when you have them making decisions every day rather than just moving the same clip from one desk to the other, no, and having a lot of instructions from the top. So we started with centralized management.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that a bit more later, the team that you built. Just back on the customer side, a friend of ours talks about how customers need to be treated well and nurtured, sort of like buying a new puppy or something like that that you brought home for the first time. Why do you think it is that your competitors have such difficulty focusing on the customer and their experience?
I think, well, I really don't know. I mean, that's the problem. I'll tell you what we do. And what we do, again, we are, first of all, we manage 22 people per property. When you have less people, it's less of a problem, no? It's easier too. Then we have a very simple, dumb and simple operation and a dumb and simple product. We are not into having to have a chef and a fancy menu, and then having a front desk guy, which is has to handle a lot and very high sophisticated people. So we are down to what we know how to do. And I would say that what we have in cities, this empowerment culture permits them to really express and be themselves. So with that in mind, try just to standardize standardize the service is easier. We are using, again, technology, a lot of courses, a lot of introductory programs. Since hiring, you don't want to have a straightforward accountant in the front desk. You want to have somebody that has a possibility to relate and to mingle with the people and be friendly. So it is a whole chain concentrated on how you manage the human capital. And since the very beginning, what to define what is your culture, what's your personality, what's the personality of the brand, and try to make a synthesis, no? Try to get into their brains and induce your personality. But you're not going to be able to do that if you don't hire the right guy, the right person. So it really moved. I was not a human resources guy. I am an electrical engineer. So I know of systems, inputs and outputs, and velocity, no, and components. So, but when you realize that, then we started to concentrate a lot in how to create a mechanism to really get the people you need for the job you want, and that could spread out your personality. And something impacted me from Avis. And if we have time, I'll take 2 minutes on it. I arrived. I do sailing. I go out and compete worldwide in sailing. I am proud to say that I am 10th of the world in my age category in a small boat called Laser. And I arrived to Montreal. No, it was Toronto. I arrived to Toronto to go to another place there to sail, and I needed my car. and a rental, but I didn't have the rental there. I had it in the end side of in the other town. No? I had to fly, but the flight was canceled. So I arrived with all my gear, and I'm tired flying and a red eye, and I arrived 5 o'clock in the morning. And then I realized that I lost there was no planes, and I had to drive. And my Avis car was in this town, Kingston, Canada, and I was in Toronto. So I walk around the whole airport, and arrived to the Avis desk, and I arrived to a lady, and I said, I need a car. I have my car in Kingston, and now I have no way to get there. Could you give me one? And instead of Kingston, Toronto. And the lady started to see me, and she started to punch, and I gave her my name, and she said, suddenly she became like exploding and say, oh, you are a preferred guest. In less than 5 minutes, I was in my car, driving exactly the same car, the same color, and driving to Kingston. So I said, well, this lady, was she trained for it? Or it's her personality? No, it doesn't happen to you very often. So I said, if Avis is doing this as a systematic basis, I have to do it in the city. You know, and then we realized that yes, what we need is people that is in the same, is able to receive the personality of the brand. So there is a match, and that's something that City Express has done very well. I don't know what the other guys do. I tell you, Marriott is a good one to do that.
No, that's great, and it's just about taking care of the customer at the end of the day and going above and beyond, and you need to find the right people to be able to do that. And again, we'll touch more on the team in just a minute. I guess just to maybe to get a little bit to the current day here, and you mentioned that the last few years have been particularly difficult. You may know that billionaire real estate investor Sam Zell, I think recently, and he's also employed some of the principals of one of your largest shareholders, Jaguar, recently said, I don't own any hotels, but if I did, I'd be slitting my wrists, which I thought was a bit extreme, but you own about 150 of them. So I just wanted to know why is Sam Zell wrong?
No, it would be hard to contradict Sam Zell, as you know. I mean, we are just a little ant compared to the guy, no? But what I can tell you is there are two businesses, definitely. The development side and the asset ownership, and then the franchise and management. When we started this company, we had to be an integrated company because there was no product that we could capitalize on by assembling that institutional capital. There were no institutional investors, no REITs, no nothing in Mexico, just independent owners. So we had to become one of those. And you might say, well, do you like the real estate business? Yes, I like it. Probably it's not appreciated because it is in this, it's under today, in today's days, it's under an umbrella, which we have the development company, we have assets that are under development, we have a management company, we have a distribution and franchise company, and we have the asset manager, the assets in the same umbrella. I think that he is right that today he would like to cut the risks, but what about when the cap rates go down and the rates are growing and the value generated by those assets? No, he forgets. I mean, is he forgetting that? He made his money out of that. So I think it's the cycle. The cycle is putting us on the spot that it is a time in which you wouldn't have liked to get into this situation with a lot of assets in the belly. But we have them. Why we have them? We had to grow fast. We had to develop and be able to have your product and your coverage of to create your footprint. Now we have that. We have the second or the first, the way you want to see it, largest distribution channel system and franchise in the country for this warrior traveler, which is the larger mass in the Mexican market. Now, what were we going to do? A couple of years ago, we created this FIBRA, this REIT, the Mexican version of the REIT, And we had now the economies of scale, the mass, to create a fibra with 40 to 50 properties. Now it could be probably 90 properties in that fibra, and then start separating the model and unlock the value that we have in the company. The parts are worth more than the whole in this situation. Now, what happened? The new government came in, a change of government, and now the pandemic. So we are kind of stuck in the middle of we were stuck in the middle of the process. But definitely the way we see, I couldn't agree more with what Sam Sell is mentioning, that today he would cost his wrists, but there's some other times in which you like to be in a situation of owning those assets when the RevPAR grows and the cap rates go down. And I think that is going to come back sooner or later. No, so we are going into we are really on a down cycle. So City Express knows that we have that very well. And I would say that is probably the major thing that we have not accomplished. We have not accomplished unlocking the value of City and having the market to realize what we are. And probably the reason is that you have the assets, which are easy to understand. We have the C Corps, franchise and management company, easy to understand. And what is in the middle, the developing side of it and the stabilization of the properties in the ramp-up stages is what it gets blurred and affects the rest, the good sides of the business. But you have to go through the ones of developing a stabilization. Probably that is what is hurting City in these days. And what we have to do is proceed sooner or later with divesting or cutting out of City and being able to place the assets, the hotel assets, into the investors we know that know how to value the market, those assets, and understands the valuations.
Yeah, and that idea is not new, right? It was done in the U.S. by Marriott and many of the others. So you're basically following a playbook that has worked. It's just a question of timing.
That's right. This is not a genius thing. And even for Marriott, back in those days, it came out of a crisis. It didn't come voluntarily. They entered into a crisis and they found out a way to split the company and realize value on two sides and separate the risk, the risk return nature of each of the kind of businesses. No?
And what about, you mentioned many of your customers are, I think you said warrior travelers. There's a sort of a common thing out there, obviously, that everyone's doing Zoom like we are now, and that nobody will need to, go on business travel anymore. Of course, leisure will come back. But so why is that not correct? Why is it not fair to say across the board that no business is going to happen?
Well, first of all, because you're privileged people that can do your meetings and keep working through Zoom and through a computer and technology. The rest of the guys like me, which are from this working class, I have to travel to develop. I have to travel to supervise my operations, and the same has to be done by the guy that works in Walmart, all the cable TVs, or the auto industry and the like. So we have to segment what's really happening. The customer has some temporary changes in behavior, and will be some of those will become permanent in the long run. No, I think the mask is going to go out quick, but definitely probably cleaning your hands and is going to stay for longer, because it has proven that not only the COVID is transmitted through that, but a lot of viruses are around that are transmitted by the kids and the wash of hands and whatever. No, so I think that in that sense, if you segment the hotel industry, you'll find that there are the guys that belong to executive suites, that they can control their schedule, their travel, and therefore they are more in the strategic and directive and supervising jobs. not on the execution of the tasks. So if you segment that, yes, probably corporate conventions, corporate meetings, expos are gonna take a little while to come back to a certain level. What level? I don't know. Probably, definitely lower than they were. But humans forget things very quick, and probably in 5 years you'll be laughing about it, and now you're into that same bar, having the same whiskey, and embracing your pals, and dancing country music. No,
Yeah.
so that's for sure. But in our case, we are in this. Mexico is still is more of an industrialized country and remains to grow a lot. The migration from China, or people that want to serve and export to the US with the new TMEC, the new trade agreement, is forcing them to come and invest in Mexico. And we are seeing that in the border heavily. So you'll find that we are also in the service business, and it grows. But definitely the industrialized part of it, the one that chews and needs and uses a lot of labor, and something that we have, it's in our population, is where the market, at least for our case, will remain and will continue to grow. So that warrior traveler in Mexico, which is the guy that has to execute, visit, travels, he has to travel, he doesn't have choices, is exactly where City Express is embedded. We don't have the large conversion centers, we don't have those wonderful pools, we're not around the resorts, we don't have, we're close to the convention centers, obviously, you know, but we are always the secondary, the secondary hotel that attends and serves those industries. We're close to the auto plants and the industrial corridors of the country. That's exactly where City Express is. So
Yeah.
our perception is that we are positioned to in the market where there is the largest number of travelers, and will continue to grow, even though there might be some reduction because some of them would use Zoom for a while, but not all the time.
Yeah, the Warriors will be back. Maybe we can talk about a little bit about technology. I know it's become an increasingly large focus of yours over the years. I think a few years ago, you in fact started a bit of a venture capital fund, or a technology related fund inside the company, participating in and profiting from disruptive technologies. Did you have a hard time convincing your colleagues to do this, and how has that gone, and sort of what have you learned from that work?
Obviously, I am 68. My partners that started the business with me, most of them are now closer to 75 and 80. No, so there is a generation now. Yeah, we've always been close to technology. Probably, as again, my background is electronics and electrical, and I understand the issue and always liked it. So when we presented this to the board, the first thing we did is, more than trying to say, hey, I want to do this and invest, is no, let me show you how we sell rooms today. And we presented how we were doing things, and how the competition was doing things, and how Amazon, with examples, how Amazon is growing. So it was an easy task, because these guys, even though they belong to a generation that normally they're not native to technology, to the iPhone and the like, it was easier to convince them. And when they saw it, they went immediately into it. And so we didn't have a hard time. In fact, it was something that liked it. And when we started to present them with the advances of the technology, it was kind of the kid with a new toy. So they saw it that way, and they figured out that technology, the way it was growing, we had to get it into city. And even though we are a hotel company, I define ourselves as a high technology. We use a massive amount of technology compared to our peers. So no, there was no problem. It started initiated very, very well, I don't say you that easy, but it was the way to present it was that the way to do it is really easier to make the decision, and they open up the can for us to invest a couple of dollars here and there, and it has proven very good for city, not only in terms of capitalizing and getting that technology into our systems, but also to open up the mind of everybody that's working on the distribution area and the marketing area to go out and search for those pieces of software that we don't have that could bring sales if we were able to hook our systems to those ones outside. And today, during this semester and this pandemic has helped us to accelerate exponentially the use of it, not only in the widgets, but also in using it. For instance, we today the managers in the hotels, everybody initiating the pandemia, started to make recordings with their iPhone about internal ¿cómo se dice recorridos? Journeys. They started to go around the hotel explaining the customer how the hotel was and what were the biosecurity measures taken, and the smile of the guy with the mask and the shield, and how they measure the temperature, but something very spontaneous about how they were going about. And they started to create meetings, and they started to do cooking sessions, learning sessions for certain accounts. So we started to see that the creativity of the people using technology to get to their customers and to tell them, we had that campaign, no? We started with a campaign that was acknowledging and recognizing the problem. In the middle of the pandemia, we are with you, and we will continue to be with you. And then we're starting to do some things about these cooking sessions and get to know Mexico through blogs and the like. And now the new communication of, hey, we're waiting for you, and a great smile. So we started to use it in a ways that I didn't imagine that people was so creative and so willing to use it in their daily job, and finding new ways to call the guy because he couldn't move. No, how could he keep the relationship with their customers? So there are a lot of things, additional things that we are looking at them today, and we will start. In fact, there are many campaigns that we're launching in second semester, beginning next September 9th, in which we're using much more the technology, and we are tied to more reservation systems and with more travel agents that we were before. So technology for city is part of the game. I think it's part of the success. It's embedded in the margins, and anyway.
Yeah, no, that's extremely helpful. It's hard to capture all of you've done in terms of your command center and all the booking systems in words. Maybe a little bit of a pivot on technology. Some folks have been worried for years now about Airbnb and Oyo and some of these other folks basically effectively adding room supply or supply to the market. What is your view on that? And particularly in Mexico, maybe it's a bit different, obviously, than say New York or LA or another city.
Sure. Well, first of all, I would say that we have the structure of our customers, and it is more of the warrior, no? It is more business than leisure, even though we are coping more leisure today and attacking more leisure in this, especially after this in the second semester, because of the City Express Pluses go better with I would say they go better with leisure traveler. But I would say that we were so concentrating in the business that we kind of, the leisure business, we got it as a second choice. And today, since the market has compressed, we are untapping the leisure business that we, let's say, didn't pay attention to it so much. So we are paying much more attention to the leisure business, and there would be a couple of points hidden in that market that we were just not paying attention to. But anyway, in that sense, I would say that definitely Airbnb goes more for leisure than business. in the terms of business, we remember we have a guy that comes in. Most of our customer, our rate is very accessible and is highly competitive to the 3-star service. But our guy, even though in this economy sector, he stays average, let's say somewhere between 1.5 nights to 1.9 nights during his travel. He does probably from 8 to 14 of these trips a year. So he does, at least with us, 14 check-ins and 14 checkouts. He wants no surprises, because during those 2 days he wants to use his time the more efficient as efficient as possible. And it's hard to compete for the traditional unit of an Airbnb with a hotel chain in this environment. And for this case, I don't doubt that this guy in other types of trips uses Airbnb. But when you have to deal with finding the host, with making the reservation through the system, that you have to wait for the host to confirm your reservation, when you have to go and do the check-in, and always nervous about whether is the keys going to be under the rug in the front door, or is going to be hidden behind the underneath X or Y drawer. So in that sense, I think that the service and the quality of the service, the journey is different. And we are in a journey that caters to the guy that wants efficiency, wants no surprises, and values time and uncertainty.
Yeah.
On the other side, yes, you would say distribution is very important. No, they are very good at distribution. But in Mexico, if you see where we are and the footprint that we have, there are cities in which there is no Airbnb still. So I would say that for the Warrior Travelers, City Express, Mexico, mostly business, the impact of Airbnb is nothing to worry, but you have to pay attention.
Yeah, when the Warrior shows up, they want to have the same standards and same breakfast and same gym every morning. Maybe we could turn a bit to the culture of the company. You touched on it earlier. I know when you travel, I think you're always, of course, if there's a City Express available, you're always staying there. I think you have many of the team members, even the senior executives, go stay at competitors' hotels and sort of do surveys about them, trying to understand where you are relative to them. Why is it so important, beyond the obvious, that you stay at your own hotels? Why are you requiring all the employees to do it? Maybe you could just talk about that.
Well, I think that part of being a CEO or being a founder, whatever you want to say, I feel myself as any other employee of the company. As well, when I sit in the board, when I act as CEO, I am the employee for the rest of the board members, no? And when I act as chairman, okay, I look more for the strategy and try to coordinate coordinate the committees, and the committees are held, and the discussion in the boards that there is, I promote the discussion and the arguments, and finally try to direct, like a orchestra director, no, get to the end and make a decision, whatever. But when I traveled, I definitely want to stay. It's difficult for me to go in, but because even though I don't mention that I am going to stay with them, I don't know how the internal CIA knows exactly where I am, and they can clean the property better than they would on a normal basis, because I'm arriving. And that happens to any executive in city. But the way to do it, and merely being there, it helps me and helps everybody to understand our product, understand our customers, get to see who's coming in, whether he has rollers or not, what is the name of the tag that they have here in the chest, and how the service is, and whether the fruit is okay for the day. I mean, it is something that you have in the blood, and if you are in this kind of service, you have to do it. I mean, it would be nonsense never to appear in a hotel and try to manage without having a touch on what's going on. But really, what I try to show with it, and the thrust of the city culture, is that everybody has to be oriented, highly oriented, concentrated in what the customer wants. 90% or 80% can be systematized, with systems, procedures, and the like. But probably 20%, it has to do with being spontaneous when the guy comes into the door, because every guy has that little different, I would say, different needs in a certain moment. Even though he's the same person that comes for leisure in the weekend, or the same person that came during the week for a business stay. But there's always that 20% that these guys have to have the empowerment to be able to act and satisfy the customer the way they need. The other thing is, it's good to know, when I go to those places, I like to go and see the competition. And that's what I promote with our staff in the hotel level. So the culture is one that you have to know the customer, you have to know your competition. Based on that, I would say the rest is a consequence. Once you know what your competition is offering at a certain price and what you are offering, and you criticize yourself and compare to that standard, then is where everything evolves creativity, evolves empowerment. This is the concept of the inverted pyramid. I mean, the guys that really manage the business are them, the guys that are touching the customer and pricing the product, because they are the ones that really know what's going on in the operations. So having them with that knowledge permits us to rely on them, because we know that with the proper training, they'll be able to deliver what we're looking for. Price related to a high value relationship versus the service received. Obviously, the culture is one that promotes innovation, promotes the use of technology, analysis, decision making, and definitely in the process there is honesty and motivation and growth for the people. So city, again, I told you, I was more of a circuits guy, designing boards, with transistors, and now I found out during the road of creating city that the human capital and the human factor is probably as important or more important than equity and even the executive guys. So that is what we have concentrated on, creating a culture that could evolve into the 21st century using technology, responding fast, and really generating and motivating your personnel to be happy.
Maybe we could dive a bit more into the inverted pyramid, you called it. I know that and you also touched on the fact that enabling your team to do what is right for the customer. So it's really a win-win. It gives them self-empowerment. It also gives the customer a much better experience. I think that the front desk folks can even change the price, and they're sort of at the bottom or the top of the triangle. I think at one point you suggested that the business might be better off if you were sitting on a beach, because effectively when the inverted pyramid is working, you can sit and think. And so maybe you could talk about how that evolved, the inverted pyramid, your philosophy, and how a bit more about how it's being implemented.
Well, I guess when you have, for instance, let me tell you, we moved during the pandemic, we moved from being here on a 14th or 15th of March. In 2 days, we were all in home office. Nobody in the office, everybody at home. The 450 people that we were here in the central office. So that tells you that technology was part of the deal, and that the mindset of the people to work from home, using it and being able to relate and continue to focus on the company was as easy as that. I also was shocked to see that the next Monday nothing happened, and we were having these conversations through through our technology and computers. No, what I would say is that the the evolution was not easy. It was not fast. It took more than, I would say, 3 to 4 years to be able to move from one side to where we are today. And we are still learning that we are probably 70 to 80% advanced, and we still have things to do. But when you have the the technology in place, when you have the systems, procedures, and learning tools that we were able to develop, when you have a product very well embedded in the mind of most of our personnel, that the personality of the people is coupled with with the culture of the company and what you want from them. So it's an evolution. It's not something that went from here to there in overnight. So and I am one of the I believe that the companies, and this is something that I learned from my teacher in sailing. He issued a piece of work, I mean, a course that's called the Boat Whisperer. And I didn't understand what Boat Whisperer meant until I saw the course. And it's really what he's telling you is when you're in a boat and a dinghy, you have to listen to the boat. And when you listen to the boat, the reactions, and you correct them, no, he's always telling you what is wrong. And it's something that I've always been using in where I've been. I tend to mingle with the people. I tend to visit the property. I tend to see the competition. I tend to see, read on what's going on in the rest of the world, what Marriott does and what does Accord and whatever. You have to listen. And what has been happening is that we have a bunch of guys that now are listening to what's happening to their teams and to the company. So when I say that I could be on the beach and I guess that's exactly what I'm trying to say. That if you have a team that is listening and correcting and willing to live with this philosophy, the 9 maxims, the commandments that we have in city, which are the main culture of city, and then these other gadgets around, call it procedures, systems that help you, benchmarking, systems for yield management, software that does massive crunching of data to understand the consumer and to price. And then you have the guy in the distribution area, in the construction area that knows exactly what materials are the good ones to put. And he is always looking for better materials and innovation and cost control, whatever. When you have a team like that, is really when you can abstract from the day to day and really think what the company should be. Now, we are still a medium to small company, no? But I think that our model proves that even in this size of this company sizes, you can work under an environment in which the persons have empowerment, in which you can keep and grow at double-digit paces for an extended period of time, even though in environments where there is a third world, I mean, where there is a country which is not necessarily in a top shape.
And maybe a bit more on personal growth. You mentioned how that is important, obviously, in empowering folks. We've met some of the property managers who I understand that many of them have started as housekeepers, really working their way up completely through the group. There was one example that stuck out, and if you don't mind sharing, I think it was a gentleman that at one point was a driver for the company or something, and now he manages multiple properties. Maybe if you don't mind sharing that, and also just touching on how you think about that, how important it is to you.
Sure, and just to I would do that immediately. I just want to tell you one thing, and when I say this from that I should be in the beach and the company would is that I guess the responsibility of any chairman or CEO is that eventually he has to go, okay, and the job that you have to create an environment in which you are not indispensable, that you are disposable. And when you become invisible and the company works, I think that is the test, the true test that you've done a good work in the company. And we're still a little bit away from it in getting the check mark, but I think that we're very close. No, now on the other side, what you're asking me, yes, I had a guy that was when I joined Posadas. He was a messenger here in the financial officer, in the financial area, which I came to. I joined the company for that, and he became from there. He went all through the different ranks, and he left when we formed the city. He came here to ask for a job. He had climbed the ladder in Posadas. He went from messenger to being an operator in the reservation area, and then he became salesman and whatever. So we invited to city, and from city he grew to become a manager of a couple of properties. So yes, we have that capability. We love to see that, how people progress through it. In fact, our current COO, Alberto Granados, he was the sales manager assistant sales manager in a Fiesta Inn in León, Guanajuato. And we built a City Express about 500 meters from the Fiesta Inn. And he came to see the COO, which he knew that time was Rogelio Avendaño, that he came from a Fiesta Inn in Juárez, so they knew each other. So he arrived to city and asked for a job. He wanted to grow. So he joined us as the sales manager of City Express León. And that's how he started. Today, he is the COO of City Express, managing 153 people, hotels. So there is mobility. And I think that, again, I am now too old to manage. I'm not too old. I'm old. But anyway, what I'm trying to say is I think that city should be managed with people that is below the 50 years old. And that is the new generation that should take this company to where it has to go in the future. No?
Yeah, and I know, so I know that's quite important to you. I was going to ask you about I know many of the team members are relatively young, many are female. Why is youth and diversity of the team so important? And I think you touched on that, the fact that you need people that listen, but maybe you could just talk about why that's so important to you in the group.
Well, it's important because, again, people, city, I grew in companies that were family owned, no? And I learned that the meritocracy is not necessarily there. And city is a meritocracy structure. And so it's open to whomever wants to exploit that venue. And let me tell you, in this case, 65% of the labor force is women. No, only 35% are male. And why is that? Because that's probably the nature of the structure of city, and the labor force that is willing to go into cleaning and initially cleaning, those are women. And they start so we have the initial base, which are the housekeepers and some front office managers. No, they're women, and then they start to grow in the organization. And that's why also in the office here in the central office, we're also with the same proportion of women and men. I guess it's the nature. If you are a company that hires young and then a majority of women, in the end, that's going to happen on top, no? And that's the other part that, again, we didn't thought of it very clearly in the beginning, but it happened. Now that happens, then you try to put the medal that it was something planned. No, it was not planned. That's the way it came out. And now we are promoting it. And it happens that sustainability and equality of gender and equality of races and whatever, it's a way to go. We suddenly appear that we are in that frenzy. No?
And lastly, on culture, before you move on and wrap up, I know you mentioned you're a big proponent of decentralization, and we talked about the front desk team having authority to change pricing, and maybe you could talk about how you make sure that incentives are aligned through the group at the property manager level and across everything. What is your philosophy, and why are incentives so powerful?
I guess I read a book which has some Christian principles on it, and it was based. And then I read that book, and a friend of mine once told me that he was working in a project in which he knew that happy people had more productivity. At the beginning, I thought that he was trying to sell me on a project, no? But then I read this document, and then I got his papers, a presentation that he made to me. And I said, okay, what is this based on? And it's based on the right that humans have to make decisions. And with that concept in mind, and having read a couple of books of several CEOs that were the most highly successful in having companies that grew exponentially with the same people, without having to grow exponentially on people, I found out that there was some mechanisms and procedures to do it, no? And there were many elements in it. And one of the elements that was there was the matrix organization. It was something that it was done in General Electric back in the ages of that famous CEO of GE, and that he grew double-digit company that was not supposed to grow at 11 digits because of being so big, so large. So we started to play with the concept, and it was that drove to the rest. No, that concept was in. We didn't have the possibility to create a centralized structure, because then the cost of the operating company would be incredible. So we had to keep costs down. So when we got into that, we decided to go into it and again convince ourselves that in order to be able to grow the way we wanted to grow at the costs that we wanted, and having these units which are small and could have a lot of staff. So the model itself, it was something that it was very, it made a lot of logic to embark in the change of culture. And that's why empowerment became the center of it. It was the seed that would provide you to really, instead of trying to make one decision centralized for 150 properties, you had to have those decisions on a daily basis, every instant, every minute in the property, rather than central. And that's how we embarked in it, and really as a source of productivity and be able to grow without growing exponentially the sales force and the corporate office and the number of people in town in the company. Because if we had done that, we wouldn't be able to reach the level of productivity that we could. So that it is something that you might say is philanthropy, but on the other side, it's economy. And when you find that both can live together, shoulder to shoulder, we decided to do it. Initially, some of our partners, I would say that took more friction into the board than the investing in technology. They were saying, well, why do you make it so complicated? I mean, a company organized by processes is much more difficult than a company organized by functions. But I said, we have to work with both, because every action that happens in the front desk goes or travels through all the organization. Administration, technology, service, marketing, and decision-making in terms of price. So it was kind of either we do it or we're not going to be able to unfold the way we wanted to unfold.
And then naturally, those people should be compensated based on if they're doing something and making decisions. They need to be their incentives need to be aligned to make the good decisions.
Definitely. We are compensated. Managing the central office is, I would say, in the higher ranks, we have 60% of our compensation is really variable. 30% is our stock option. It's a stock option plan, and 30% is a yearly bonus, and only 40% is salary and wages, fixed salary. So you can imagine the suffering that we're having today, but then we are tying the shareholders' interest into the top management. Now, as the ranks go down or go up in our inverted pyramid, as they go up, they get more. They don't get. Obviously they don't have stock options. They don't value stock options at that level. They want cash and savings in start their savings. So it still is paid in a 30% basis is bonus. It's a yearly, it's a quarterly bonus, and sometimes in the sales area is monthly bonus based on production. So what you do is, if you want to empower people and you want to be successful, you have to change your compensation systems and have the technology to be able to evaluate on a very precise basis or logical basis the success. And it's is occupancy penetration or rate penetration in the different markets, in the different hotels, and based on that is what you pay. And when you find that you're empowered and you do well and you collect and you have more money, I mean, the circle is very virtuous.
The flywheel.
That's right. So that is again, you cannot do it without closing the circle. You can, and that is what we were forced to. We started to play with concepts and we had to close the circle. So that's why we had to embrace an inverted pyramid, empowerment, technology, foster innovation, use of systems and procedures, and very strict measures of ethics around, and a lot of things that we had to create in order to make the wheel turn.
Yeah. And maybe just to wrap up, I guess maybe we can ask sort of your biggest learning so far, or your biggest mistake, or however you want to sort of frame it up, and maybe a learning from a mistake since founding Hotela City that you would change or that you've learned in aggregate.
I would tell you the first mistake that we did when we started the company is never to think about that money behind the company, so that investors, you don't need money. Money is all over the place. What you need is quality money. And that quality money refers to having the right partners in the right moment for such project. I missed it in the first time. I thought that these 4 or 5 guys from Monterey that were had a couple of Hampton Inns and 1 Holiday Inn where they put in money, well, say, okay, it's going to work, no problem. No, I found out that the mentality and the idiosyncrasy of some of them was completely conflictive with what the project should be. And we were fortunate enough that in a year we were able to find that, and we could correct by selling or buying what we had and starting over. And the second time that we did it, that's why I went to find a different kind of people that should invest in city in order for that they would be in the same strategic mentality and looking for the same objectives, not control, growth. They had interest in generating this kind of project in Mexico and diversify the social impact of it, etc., etc. Now, where is my most frustration is that fundamentally we have complied with most of what we offer when we develop the project. If we had done this in some other part of the world, the size of city would probably be different. In Ecuador would have been of a couple of properties. In the US would have been in the 1,000 of properties. But we are Mexicans and we live here and we started it in Mexico. So that was the underlying chord that we had to play with. I would say that where we are frustrated is really in that we haven't had we haven't provided to our shareholders, especially in these last couple of years, with evaluation in the market, with the value in the market that we think that it should have. And we tried to work for it, and somewhat the times were turned, didn't work in our favor. and we are now, forget about the pandemic. The pandemic is a kind of cold in a lifetime of a company, no? And also a period of 6 years of a president from left to right or right to left is also something that should be transient, not permanent. But nevertheless, it's something that in the normal market, we still had an undervaluation, a perceived undervaluation inside my head, no? And that is something that I tell you honestly, that is the only frustration I have found. And probably is that it is definitely, we thought back in those days, 2 years ago, we always thought that we needed to go and separate the companies in order to untap that value. And I would continue to think on that. And that is something that Paul in the company and Santiago Parra and all the people you know we will continue to work to do something. Now, the pandemic, what brings the pandemic? We are living through the pandemic. The first reaction is, okay, let's try to survive. I think we have the cash to survive. We have controlled the cash flow drainage of the company in such a way. By the way, we are now in break even, operating break even. In the last month of June we had, and July will come the same. And for that, at least we feel highly comfortable with we're doing what has to be done. We believe that we are going to make it. We are pretty sure, that we're going to make it with the cash on hand we had, and the burnout ratio, the runway is long enough. Here is not a place whether we're going to make it or not. That to me, it's a given. It's how we're going to arrive in the first quarter of 2021. And we want to be a player in that market because opportunities will present. So now it's a matter of playing with our assets. We have good currency in the company, that it is the pipeline of projects and the hotels that are complete and ready to go on any moment in the company that represent resources. So now we're going to play with the asset base in order to generate cash in such a way that we don't end leveraged, or the least leverage that we can, in order that we can become a player to take chance of the opportunities that this market is going to present. So yes, we are kind of trying to seal our wounds, no, during this process. But by doing that is we have to watch now the balance sheet to keep more resources, the largest, burn the less amount of cash that we can, which is we're doing it, and now play with the resources that we have in the balance sheet, which are not generating EBITDA, which are assets, good assets like land with projects and some hotels that are being that are finished but not opened, and that we could probably get rid of those, find partners without pressing the price and pressing and losing money in it. Just trying to create enough cash in order to be able to come back stronger and be able to play in a market which is going to be is going to provide opportunities for a company like us.
Maybe we could just end on sort of optimistic. What would you define a success for Hotel City over the next any number of years you pick?
I would say that keep growing. I mean, keep developing our products, keep covering the footprint, and again, and changing the model that we have followed for the last couple of years by being more asset light. I guess that is the name of the game, becoming more asset light and using those resources to grow and probably or distribute, no, and start becoming more a dividend company and still grow at certain acceptable rate.
No, that sounds good. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up here?
No, I will thank you very much for this hour and a half that you let me explain and go back to open the drawers that I had closed for many years now.
No, it was wonderful. We really appreciate you taking the time. We'd like to thank, Hector, Paul, and thanks to Daniel, our colleague, for helping set this up. And thanks to you all for joining today. We really appreciate it. And we'll hope to see you in person soon here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.